candidates. You can step down, and we will
Thank you.
Thank you.
notify you of your status.
Have a good evening.
Okay, thank you. We're not interviewing any other candidates, so you're welcome to stay or go as you please. Is there any public comment on any of our candidates? Ms. Cooley, please come up and comment.
I'm Betsy Cooley, resident of 28 years.
Wait, the mic's not on.
Nobody's.
Just bring it up to you, but can't breathe.
Yeah, it looks like it's on. Is this like that? Can you hear me now? Okay. I'd just like to speak up on behalf of Brian Carver. I've known him for 5 years. I think he's an extremely smart individual. He really cares deeply about the schools and has 2 children in the Emery School District, and I think he's very thoughtful. He's always willing to discuss really anything that that people want to talk about. So he's very open to working with other people, and I think he'd be a really excellent school board member. So I hope you consider him. I'm sure you'll consider him.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other public comments? All right, we're going to close the public comment. And then we're on to deliberations. Do we have any board members who'd like to weigh in with their considerations? Don't all speak at once.
I'll open up.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
All right, Ms. Merriam.
Just a casual, just an observation through the proceedings. I think we ended up with a unique perspective that 4 different views, if you really want to say, as far as the candidates that were wanting to commit to this endeavor. So I appreciate that. That was very, very informative and eye-opener, and it's a relief that we did get a vast selection to choose from. So this decision is going to be a very difficult one. So that's kind of my opening statement. But as far as deliberating, everyone brought positive thoughts and ideas to the table and are willing to discuss them on various levels, and I look forward to any and all of these, even in the public forum. So that's what I want to open with.
Okay. Well, I would agree with that. I think we had 4 different candidates who all presented interesting and thoughtful perspectives on why they're interested in serving on the board and what public education is about and what are the strengths and challenges for the district going forward. So I think it was worth bringing in these candidates, and as you say, it was a diverse set of individuals with different backgrounds. As for me, I again think Mr. Bukowski brings a lot of experience with the city and in government. He certainly has been selfless supporter of Emeryville and done a lot of good work for the city, and in his time on the city council, a lot of good work to support the school district. So I think the city is better for having Ken as a citizen. I do not get from his application same thing I didn't get last time, which is much of a specific connection around public education and his experience with public education, or even necessarily the people and the workings of our school district. So I think I'm glad we brought him back, but he wouldn't be my top choice. Among the other candidates, it was also an interesting and thoughtful group of the other three. I think we have on the board individuals, two of us, who live in the Triangle and represent or have children, school-aged children, and have, well, at least I have, as Mr. Carver has currently, children at Annie Yates. And what we don't have on the board is someone who is coming more from a student experience and who is more intimately familiar with the workings of the high school, and we don't have an alumnus on the board now that Ms. Dice has stepped down. And for a school district that is 55% African American, we don't have any African American representation on the board. And I think we have a candidate who is a thoughtful young woman who's an alumnus, who's a graduate, who's been through our school system, and succeeded beyond that and obtained a 4-year degree, and is making her way in the world and wants to give back to the community. So in sum, among the competing options, I'm currently leaning toward Ms. Collins-Rogers.
Yeah, I think of things and looked at each question and sort of ranked and scored people on the questions, and I agree with the sentiment of on paper, when I was looking through the applications, Ms. Collins-Rogers was sort of the front runner in my mind, because I do think it represents a voice that we desperately need on the board. That said, I was concerned with some of the answers. I think there was not some understanding of the role of the board. I think there was a lot of good ideas or terms, but not substance behind them. I felt that there were, some phrases and things that I thought were, great. They're phrases and things that I support, but it didn't answer the question. It was just sort of, here's a term that goes there. And so I found that leaving me to want more, you know, in scoring things. You know, and same thing with Miss Sanchez as a sort of, you know, another parent, another member of the triangle, and I found incongruities in her answers, and so I was never sure, was this a strength, was this a weakness, was this what was intended or not intended? You know, it left me very challenged with some of her answers, you know, and I would have liked more brevity from Mr. Carver and a little bit more succinctness in his answers, but I did feel like he does bring that experience that we talked about with Ken. He's very involved in the city and has been on a lot of committees. I do actually don't hold it against him that he has kids in the district. I think you used the phrase a long time ago, skin in the game, and I like that. I like that somebody has children, and that sort of, you know, it's piqued my interest with Ms. Sanchez. It piqued my interest with Mr. Carver. You know, I thought he understood some of the roles a little bit better. I thought he was, again, I wish he'd been more cohesive with his answers, but there wasn't this sense of, you know, incongruities that I felt with Ms. Sanchez. You know, for me, I think you know, for me, if I talk about Ken, I think his biggest strength is he was the only one to challenge our goals. He was the only one not to say, oh, yay, these are great. He really said, no, these are too wordy, too broad, not measurable, and I thought that was really, you know, a powerful moment for him, and that where he sort of had that courage to sort of say, you know, I'm not just going to agree, and then brought it back around about being a team player. So it wasn't that he was being contrarian, but he was giving us honest feedback, and I really liked that. But as I said before, I would have been happy not to have him included in this evening's discussion. I think, you know, he doesn't have the same qualities the other three do. He's not a parent with a kid in the district, or a parent. You know, he's not an alum. I think he's had his day in the sun. I think we want fresh blood. So going through that, just looking at the content of the answers, I give the edge to Mr. Carver, because I felt like there was a lot more substance there. You know, I rank because that's how I interview. I have been in the public sector too long. We have to rank and ladder people, and so you know, I can't say as I thought he was always the best answer, but I always felt he was, you know, a lot of. I'm looking at my rankings. He's got a lot of 2s on the answers, and so I ended up, you know, getting the most second place votes. You know, followed by Miss Colin Rogers. You know, I had her ranked second, and again, just because I would have liked not just the concept, but I would have liked to have how that's turned into action. When she started clarifying at the end, I felt there was some more stuff there, and we were getting to it, but I would have liked more meat on the structure earlier on, and so, you know, I feel like she's very close, whereas I feel Ken's at the tail end. I think she's just the start and has a very bright future, but I don't think we can afford that learning curve at this time. We need people ready to hit the ground, so that's where I'm at.
I may have to run outside any moment.
You
But
can take the mic with you.
Transmit back in.
I'm torn on 3 out of 4 of the candidates for different reasons. To quickly touch on what you were saying with Brittany. Although I understand where you're coming from, I think I was very much that. I very much sat in that seat when I first joined the board. I was only 28 or something, 28, 29, and did not have very much background with how all of this runs. And you're forced to learn very quickly. And I think having someone who didn't necessarily know what was going on was helpful, because it was like seeing it with fresh eyes. So that would be my take on her. Just, I think it would be helpful. I also agree that the voice of the alumni and another woman, an African American woman at that, it would be beneficial. So by a small margin, I think she's slightly in the lead for me. I thought Brian Carver answered everything very well, and I have worked with him in the past. I think he's great and very educated, very knows what needs to happen, and I think he could help really get some things going there. But coming from someone who sits in the seat of the board of bringing a point of view that is more not, there's no way to say this. Sorry, I'm not using my brain. I just think a different point of view is helpful, and I think that although he is a brilliant man, I think we have a lot of what he has already sitting here between the three of you. And I enjoyed Miss Sanchez as well, but I had a hard time understanding where she sat on quite a few of the questions. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents, and Mike is here, so I'm going to run outside.
Well, we got your opening salvo, so it's time for round two.
I wanted to set the table, I guess. Yeah, input from fellow board members is one way to gauge kind of the consensus, at least which we're trying to get to. My take on this is that Ms. Sanchez brings a different point of view, along with Ms. Collins, and forgive me if I've mistaken the names on that. Mr. Carver, on the other hand, he brings a copious amount of, I want to say, importance to the position. But I think we're looking for a different perspective. And of the two women that were applicants, I feel that those are the two stronger of the group. With that being said, I wouldn't have an issue, or it would be probably a positive if Ms. Sanchez became a member of the board.
So I'm not sure. Are you saying Ms. Sanchez is your number one?
Yeah, number
candidate?
one. And number two would be Mr. Carver.
So maybe you should repeat that for member Ash.
Member Ash, my consensus, or my ranking, if you want to call it ranking, Ms. Sanchez would be number one, and Mr. Carver would be number two.
And do you have a 3 and a 4?
Number three would be Ms. Collins, and number four would be Mr. Murkowski.
Okay. Well, this is an interesting situation because we don't have a majority consensus on any one candidate. We have, if I can recap, at least the number ones. Ms. Collins has 2 votes. Mr. Carver has 1 vote. And Ms. Sanchez has 1 vote. and that's where we currently stand. I would say I guess on round 2 of commentary, that I think in terms of Ms. Collins, I think she was the most nervous of our candidates. She's the youngest of our candidates. This is the newest, probably experience like this for her. And I feel we didn't get her best sort of sense, her best self, until we started to get, as Mr. Pat said, to the end and the final statement and where she was speaking much more freely and clearly, and I think starting to bring herself to the forefront. The things, again, from the whole package, and I don't think I would. People decide in different ways, but I wouldn't decide just on an interview. I think we're looking at their application and their experience and history and work in the community. And I do think she brings the most new things that we don't have on the board in terms of the alumni experience, the president of the high school when in the senior class, when she graduated, having served on the city schools committee and been involved in the ECCL project, and being a successful college graduate to come back, as well as being a woman and an African-American voice on the board. So that's my round 2 comment.
So I'm looking to be persuaded based on content. I mean, I take almost a different tact from you. I feel like the whole purpose of the interview is just that, to get to the content of what's there. We put some time and effort into the questions, and while I agree the whole picture is what we want to look at, and I would love some diversity on the board, and I would love to have a student voice on the board. But I feel like unless I get a content argument of like, well, this question was answered particularly well, or those sort of things, that's where I struggle of, if all things were equal, if we took the names and we took the faces out of the equation and we just looked at the answers, I really don't think you'd come to the same conclusion, and that's where I'm sort of given a pause of like, what are we doing here? If that were the case, and that was the rubric we're using, that's fine. But I don't know that that is the rubric we're supposed to use. So I guess, again, I go back to, I'd love to hear, instead of, a different voice and rounds out the board, because I agree, those are incredibly important things. But I also want to make sure that we have not just the external factors, but the internal. And that's the purpose of the interview, is to get at those internal workings. And I didn't, I agree with you. I said it initially. It got better at the end, but I wrote down things as she was saying them, and raise awareness, empower students. Those are great things, but I didn't hear any how. I didn't hear anything else. I heard the phrase, and I didn't hear the next step. When we get into question 4, the superintendent's role versus the board's role, this really stood out to me is, the board's a team, but the superintendent manages them. And while I think there's some things that we can learn on the job, that's fine, but if we have candidates who are already aware of that, then is that equitable? And so I guess to me it's a matter of what are we judging people on? And until you tell me that we're really evaluating the content of their answers and their knowledge base and then citing examples, I think that changes the whole purpose. I mean, that sort of said, well, that's what we should have put as our applicant. We want a student, we need more females, we need a person of color on the board. And I think, that's what I want on the board. But from the pool that we have, I don't know that we can just say, okay, that's the only criteria. I really, it does a disservice to everybody involved in the process, because now you've taken away this idea. It's my son and I. It's Martin Luther King week, and it's it's judging people on external attributes as opposed to the content within. And I think Ms. Rogers will get hyphenated names always give me a difficulty. Ms. Collins Rogers will get there. And I think probably she and I are more aligned in our answers to these questions. But based on the interview, I didn't get there. And that's, to me, that's a matter of what are the criteria we're using. If we're using the criteria of how ready are they to govern at this moment, then we have to look at the answers. I mean, I thought the answers on her application were excellent, but we didn't see that live. I thought Brian's answers on his application were okay, and I thought his performance this evening was good. But again, it's that depth. I tell you, my two choices, just reading applications, I was really excited by Ms. Sanchez. And I wish I had seen what Dawn had seen, because it would have given me a different first. But she contradicted herself. She didn't answer the questions a lot of the times. And she did one of my favorite things in an interview, have a theme. I always tell people when they talk to me how to interview well, have a theme. She kept going back to communication, and I loved that. But she did it at the exclusion of the answers to the questions. I'm with Joy on this. I don't know how she answered half the questions. I don't know if the problems or the strengths in the district are our teachers, or if the problem in our district is our teachers, because I heard both. I don't know if Mr. Rubio is a great communicator, or if our district doesn't communicate very well at all, because I heard both. So again, I go back to, because again, she has the criteria. She's a person of color. She has a child of school age. She has the experience. But that's not enough for me. I need to know that you can answer the questions and you're ready to hit the ground running. And so that's where I'm struggling, So again, I'll go back to the other board members.
Additional thoughts?
Might have a couple. In regards to Mr. Carver's answers, some of them made me pause for a moment. One of them being that, I think it was question 5 when or the one that President Affel asked, was having to do with the CCL, or recognizing that, where I summed it up was that he didn't recognize that the ECL is not a goal based on the goals that we have. It's the community. And that answer veered itself back to a building or a campus. What we're trying to develop is a community. Mm-hmm. And that gave me pause for concern based on that. Another one was that small schools do work. And although the student population is busy with various activities, both during the school day and after school, that small schools do work. And there's been various examples that they've been very, very successful. And to say that small schools don't work because the students are taxed because they're too busy to achieve, I think that's wrong. That's a wrong approach to take, especially in our district. So those are the two main things that I had came away as negative, as opposed to there's many positive that he had, but I think there was something missing in his address to the entire student body from K through 12. It was missing from, I think, the middle school on, and that was dearly lacking as far as addressing the needs within the district.
With that last point, Dawn, I would feel the same way about Ms. Sanchez.
Yeah.
And she was very focused on the elementary school, as that is what her experience has been. You know, she had experience with the elementary school, and I think that our district we have a very strong elementary school, and we have a high school that needs some work. And I guess maybe that's why Ms. Collins-Rogers is appealing, just because she has the most experience with our high school than any of the candidates and any of us sitting here. And although I do agree with a lot of what you're saying, I do. And I do understand what you're saying as far as like the content in the interview is what we should be based off of. Although what you can bring to the table needs to be, you know, needs to be looked at also. And I think that, I mean, that's where I sit, is with all the candidates. So. Sorry.
I'm not sleeping.
Not sleeping, baby deprived.
Baby's teething. I woke up at 12.
Superintendent, do you have any thoughts on the candidates?
I do. I do. Sorry about that. I would. How often do I get to say this? I would agree with Member Pats, to be honest with you. I'm just kidding. I think that the content is important. I very much appreciate all the candidates, and I think Ms. Collins, with her student experience, Ms. Collins-Rogers, excuse me, would be a great candidate. However, I would agree with Member Merriam about Ms. Sanchez, and I'll tell you why. I think as a board and just as a group, we should probably just be cautious of any parents regardless of the background of their English language English language skills. And I did hear her say, I did lose her once or twice. That was similar for me, but I did hear her say that we have strong teachers. But I also heard her say that one of the areas for improvement is that we need highly skilled teachers. I thought it was very, very politically said well. And I have to admit, I would be attracted to, in terms of what she would bring to the board between the two female candidates, somebody with a marketing background is something we should not overlook. So I would agree. I think there are some communication challenges there, but I think we should just be careful when we have any candidate who is where English is not their first language. I anticipated that almost, but for me, I think that energy level was important, and the maturity of her. Although it was, I did lose her once or twice. For me, the completeness of her answers. And the theme that she kept talking about, which I was impressed by, was finding common ground and common goals. And I think that was well done of her. So for me, she was the only candidate who got down to the classroom level in her answers. And I appreciated that she said, we need highly skilled educators, because I think she was right on that one. So that would be my 2 cents. And I would agree with Member Pats otherwise.
Well, has anyone changed their mind after the second round of discussion? Your ranking, Member Pats, was Carver, Collins.
And then I had, I think, Sanchez and Bukowski tied. No, I had Bukowski above Sanchez. So,
Your ranking after was Collins.
Collins, Carver, Sanchez, Bukowski.
Mine was Collins, Sanchez, Carver, Bukowski. Could you tell us yours again, Member Marion?
Yes. Sanchez 1, Carver 2, Collins Rogers 3, and Bukowski 4.
So we can entertain thoughts on how we should proceed. We can sit here and stare at each other for a while longer. We can, which we did the last time we interviewed candidates. Actually, we did not decide the evening of the interview, but came back to a subsequent meeting and slept on it and thought about it.
Which I found incredibly helpful, just for the record, when we went through this last time, to have even the 24 hours just to kind of reflect was really helpful, at least for me in my process. So.
Okay, so that is an option if we have to decide by February 4th, so it would be probably another short special meeting. When's our, oh, no, we're 27th, yeah, so we could put it on the agenda for next week. So, thoughts about those two options?
I like that. Well, the postpone.
Speaking of-
I'm sorry. Yes, I would prefer the not postponing, but the waiting period as far as to make a decision.
Reflection period.
Yes.
Okay. Member Pats?
it's clear we're not coming to a decision now. So,
Okay. Well, then, I think that concludes our business for this evening, and we will we'll go home and reflect further and put this on the board agenda for next week. I want to thank again all the candidates for making this a difficult decision and bringing different things that are causing us to want to reflect further on things. We are now adjourned.